Hello. I did, in fact, have my father give me a haircut, so that's that. But, welcome back to a galaxy far, far away in the Star Wars expanded universe, now dubbed Legends, because Disney wants to tell us that it's fan fiction at this point. Well, I'd say that's reverse. I'd say that Disney's the fan fiction. But anyway, this is the second book in Lando Calrissian Trilogy by L. Neil Smith, because I remembered the author now. This is the Flamewind of Oseon, something like that. I read it as Oseon, whatever. This one's also pretty short, so I'm not gonna say too much. But we learn a bit more about Fufura near like the end of the book. I'm not going to tell you anything about that, but we learn a little bit more about that droid in his past. We also learn a little bit of Lando's past during a scene. May involve some torture. Won't tell you what kind of torture, but it does involve some of that. So that's interesting. Of course, he goes right back to gambling, right after the first book. He tried selling some of that stuff in the first book, and it just, he ended up feeling like he had less, he's selling this stuff, and somehow he's getting less money than he started out with, so goes back to gambling, to this system, and he ends up getting into a situation that he really doesn't want to be in again, just like the first book. This one was far less Indiana Jones-like, though, but it is similar in the fact that he had to go do something that he didn't want to do. He didn't want to be a part of it, but it was a force of hand. He was kind of forced to get back into that. So, Rokor Gapta, or however you say that, he returns. He's very interesting, because this is written like the 80s, so I don't know how much of the Star Wars universe they actually knew, because the Legends universe would have been pretty early at that point, before it was even really dubbed the expanded universe or whatever. But he's like a sorcerer, and it's not the Force, and it's also not the Night Sister powers either. It's like he can do illusions and stuff. It's very weird, but it's also interesting. And I mean, as a villain, we've had 2 books with him now, and he wasn't really a big part of the last book. He was just kind of there. And in this one, he's, a little bit more relevant. He's the only, like, real big connecting piece from the last one, that and Vufi Raw. Other than that, it's pretty own standalone story. But he's not, I mean, I haven't even read it yet. But I've seen clips from Rebels, and I know Rebels pales in comparison to what the Thrawn trilogy will show us. But, and he's no Darth Vader, he's no Thrawn, he's no Boba Fett, he's nothing like that. He's not that, he's a fine villain, he serves his purpose, but he's not super compelling or anything. But again, this is Lando Calrissian. He's not a Luke Skywalker. He's not a Han Solo. He's just an average dude. And so, I mean, I guess you could say the same thing about Han, but we all love Han, and there's something about him that's more than average. Than Lando's more of like the typical everyday guy that we get to read a story about. And it's probably why he really is only a side character in every other story, because these ones he can carry himself fine. But like in stories like Episode 5, you can't center around him, because he's not, in the grand scheme of things, that big. But it was interesting because we got small tidbits of his past, and what was going on with him, so that was cool. But like I said, it's still a short book, so I don't want to get too much into it, because if I really say anything, it'll be spoilers. And it's a good read, but it's not the type of read where I want to talk about everything, like spoil everything, like I kind of did with the Rise of the Dark Lord or whatever, The one that's centered around like Darth Vader and one of the Jedi's after Order 66. Like that one was, oh yeah, that was a good time. So I wanted to talk about, stuff. But no, overall it was really good. If you like Lando, you're gonna enjoy this trilogy. Like I said, the whole trilogy is like 7 books on ebook. So during quarantine, you're here, you're not able to do anything. If you're, super bored or anything, and you like Star Wars and you like Lando, this takes place before Episode 4. So if you wanted to read this before you watch Episode 4 and 5, it's a pretty good read, and you get to know a little bit more about Lando and to care about him and stuff, and it might make Episode 5 a little bit more interesting. Not that it directly ties into anything in Episode 5 or anything. But yeah, overall, really good read. And I'll see you in the final edition of the Lando trilogy. And then we'll move on to the Han Solo trilogy by Brian Daley, which also came out in the 80s, before finally returning to the A.T. Crispin Han Solo trilogy with Rebel Dawn. Anyway, I look forward to going through all that with you, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you.